The lights were too bright. Everything was white and clean and cold. Velmoth opened his eyes slowly, feeling pain shoot through his entire body. He tried to move, but his arms wouldn't respond. Panic filled his chest. Where was he? What happened to his fleet? Then he remembered. The screaming, the fire, the humans. A door opened with a soft hiss. Velmoth's 3 eyes focused on the figure entering the room. It was tall, walking on 2 legs, with pale skin and dark hair. A human. The creature wore white clothing and carried a small device in its hands. "No," Velmoth whispered, his voice breaking. "Stay away from me." The human stopped and tilted its head. "I'm Dr. Yunho. I'm here to help you. You're safe now. Safe." The word was a lie. Nothing was safe around these creatures. Velmoth had seen what they could do. He tried to pull away, but the pain was too much. His breathing came in short gasps. "Please," the human said softly. "Your wounds need treatment." "I'm a doctor." "You're a killer," Velmoth said. "All of you are killers." Dr. Yunho set down his device and stepped back, giving Velmoth space. Another human entered the room. This one female, with short black hair and a military uniform. She had kind eyes, but Velmoth knew better than to trust that. "I'm Captain G1, she said. "We pulled you from the wreckage 3 weeks ago. You were the only survivor. 3 weeks. The only survivor." Velmoth felt his heart sink. His entire fleet. Gone. Thousands of soldiers. The best warriors of the Crithian Empire. All dead. "How?" he asked quietly. "Your ship broke apart during re-entry," G1 explained. "Your escape pod crashed in the northern mountains. Our rescue team found you. Why did you save me?" The question seemed to confuse the humans. They looked at each other, then back at him. "Because you needed help," Dr. Yunho said simply. It made no sense. "In war, you didn't save your enemies. You finished them. That was the rule. But these humans had pulled him from the wreckage, treated his wounds, kept him alive. Why?" The door opened again. This time, a different creature entered. Taller than the humans, with gray skin and 4 arms. Counselor Tharvex, of the Galactic Council. Relief flooded through Velmoth. "Counselor," he gasped. "You must get me away from them. Please." Tharvex moved closer, his expression unreadable. "The humans have been keeping you alive, Velmoth. They've done nothing to harm you. They don't need to harm me now," Velmoth said. "They already destroyed everything. My fleet. My people. Everything. We need to understand what happened," Tharvex said. "Your empire attacked a human colony world without provocation. Why?" Velmoth laughed, but it came out as a broken sound. "We thought they were weak. We thought it would be easy." "Tell me everything," Tharvex commanded. The memories came flooding back. 3 months ago, the War Council had gathered. General Krixtal had presented the plan with confidence. The humans had only been part of the galactic community for 20 cycles. They were new, young, and their colony worlds were barely defended. Intelligence reports showed the planet Kepler 442b had only a small militia. No real military presence. Just farmers and families. It was supposed to be a simple conquest, Velmoth said. We would take the planet, use it as a forward base, and the humans would surrender rather than fight. That's what civilized species do. But they didn't surrender, Tharvex said. No. Velmoth's voice dropped to a whisper. They didn't run either. They didn't panic. They just fought. He remembered the first day of the invasion. The orbital bombardment had gone as planned. They hit the military bases, the communications towers, the spaceport, everything that should have broken their ability to resist. Then, the ground troops landed. We had 50,000 soldiers, Velmoth continued, against a colony of 30,000 humans. Half of them were civilians. Children. Old ones. We thought it would be over in days. How long did it last? G1 asked quietly. 63 days, Velmoth said. 63 days of hell. Dr. Yunho's expression didn't change. But something flickered in his eyes. Not pride. Something else. Sadness. Maybe. They came at us from everywhere, Velmoth said. The farmers knew the land better than our scouts. The teachers organized supply lines. The doctors set up field hospitals in caves. And they all fought. Every single one of them knew how to use weapons, how to set traps, how to coordinate attacks. Human colonies maintain civil defense training, G1 explained. Standard, Velmoth repeated. You teach your children to fight. We teach them to survive, she corrected. It's the same thing for you, isn't it? Velmoth said. That's what I don't think the Council understands. You don't have soldiers and civilians. You just have humans. And every human is dangerous. Tharvex's forearms crossed in front of his chest. These are serious accusations, Velmoth. They're not accusations. They're warnings. Velmoth looked directly at the counselor. You think you know what humans are because they've been peaceful in the council. They smile and trade and negotiate. But I've seen what they become when you threaten them. I've seen what they're really capable of. Known. And what's that? Tharvex asked. Everything, Velmoth said. They're capable of everything. And they never stop. They don't break. They don't surrender. They just keep coming. Until you're dead. Or they are. The room fell silent. Dr. Yunho looked uncomfortable. Captain G1's expression remained neutral. Counselor Tharvex seemed thoughtful. I need you to tell me everything that happened, Tharvex said finally. From the beginning. Every detail. Velmoth closed his eyes. The memories were painful, but the counselor was right. Someone needed to know the truth. Someone needed to understand what humanity really was, before another species made the same mistake his people had. I'll tell you, he said quietly. But you won't believe me. Not until it's too late. 3 months earlier, the Crithian fleet emerged from hyperspace above Kepler 442b. Velmoth stood at his station on the bridge, watching the blue and green planet rotate slowly below them. It looked peaceful. Beautiful, even. Small cities dotted the surface between vast farming zones. This was New Busan, a human colony world that had existed for only 15 years. Scan complete, the sensor officer reported. Population 30,000. Minimal military presence. 3 patrol ships in orbit, all small class. Ground forces, estimated at 500 militia. General Krixtal smiled, showing his sharp teeth. This will be over before dinner. Prepare orbital bombardment. Target their military installations first. Velmoth felt a small knot of worry in his stomach, but he pushed it away. The general was experienced. He had conquered 12 worlds. This was just another easy victory. The fleet's weapons came alive. Bright beams of energy lanced down from orbit, striking military bases and communication towers. Explosions bloomed across the planet's surface. The 3 human patrol ships tried to respond but were quickly destroyed. Everything was going according to plan. Ground forces, begin landing operations, Krixtal ordered. Velmoth watched the dropships descend through the atmosphere. 10,000 soldiers in the first wave. Enough to secure the capital city and force a surrender. Standard procedure. Then his console started flashing warnings. Sir, Velmoth said, I'm detecting movement. Multiple groups, all across the planet. They're organizing. Of course they're organizing, Krixtal said. They're running away. Evacuating to the countryside. Let them run. We'll round them up later. But Velmoth wasn't so sure. The movement patterns didn't look like evacuation. They looked like deployment. Military deployment. The first dropships landed outside the capital city. Velmoth switched his display to the helmet cameras of the ground troops. He watched as soldiers poured out of the ships, weapons ready, scanning for threats. The city looked empty. Buildings stood silent. Streets were clear. No civilians running in panic. No defenders visible anywhere. Spread out. The ground commander ordered. Secure the main avenue. Watch for. The explosion cut him off. One of the buildings simply erupted, taking out an entire squad. Then another explosion. And another. The street became a killing zone. Ambush. Someone screamed over the radio. Velmoth watched in horror as the camera feeds showed Crithian soldiers falling. But where were the attackers? Then he saw them. Humans, appearing from buildings, from underground tunnels, from behind vehicles. They moved with precision, each one covering another, advancing and retreating in perfect coordination. Ground commander, report, Krixtal demanded. We're taking heavy fire. They were waiting for us. This wasn't random. They knew exactly where we'd land. Of course they knew, Velmoth thought. We bombarded their communication towers, not their people. They had time to prepare. On another camera feed, he saw something that made his blood run cold. A human, young and small, probably only 12 years old. The child was helping move wounded adults into a building, completely calm under fire. No crying, no panic, just cold efficiency. What are your children doing on the battlefield? Velmoth whispered. Over the next hours, the reports got worse. The human militia wasn't running. They were fighting with tactics that shouldn't be possible for civilians. Coordinated ambushes, strategic retreats, supply lines that appeared from nowhere. Every farmer seemed to know how to shoot. Every teacher knew how to set explosives. Every civilian was a soldier. By nightfall, the Crithian ground forces had taken heavy casualties. They held a small portion of the capital, surrounded by enemies who attacked and faded away like ghosts. This is impossible, Krixtal said. They're farmers and merchants. Where did they learn to fight like this? Velmoth had been wondering the same thing. He accessed the human colony's information network, which was surprisingly still active despite the bombardment. What he found disturbed him deeply. The colony had mandatory defense training for everyone over age 10. Their schools taught not just mathematics and language, but also tactics and survival skills. Their sporting events built endurance and teamwork. Their entertainment celebrated warriors and sacrifice. Even their children's games were about strategy and combat. General, Velmoth said carefully, I think we misunderstood what humans are. They're civilians. Krixtal snapped. No, sir. I don't think they have civilians. Not the way we understand it. On the surface, Commander De Jung stood in the colony's emergency command center, which had been built deep underground for exactly this kind of situation. Around him, volunteers worked at computers, coordinating the defense. A young woman named Hana, who had been training to be a teacher, was now managing supply distribution to combat units. Group 7 needs more ammunition, she reported calmly. Group 3 is falling back to position beta. Group 5 reports enemy armor moving toward Sector 4. De Jung nodded and updated the tactical display. 15 years ago, he had been a soldier in Earth's military. He retired and came to this colony to farm and raise a family. But he never stopped being a soldier. None of them did. Sir, Hana said. The children are secured in Shelter Complex 3. Medical teams are ready. Food supplies will last 6 months if rationed. Good, De Jung said. Send word to all units. We hold the line, no matter what. Above ground, Private Hana's younger sister led a squad of militia through the ruins of a shopping district. She was 19 years old and had never been in real combat before. But she had trained for this her entire life. Every human colony did, because humanity remembered its history. They remembered the wars. All of them. The ancient ones fought with swords and spears. The world wars fought with machines and bombs. The space conflicts fought with lasers and missiles. 10,000 years of warfare had taught humanity one lesson. Always be ready. Contact, someone whispered over the radio. Enemy patrol, 12 soldiers, moving east. The squad moved into position without needing orders. Each person knew their role. They had practiced this 100 times. They waited until the Crithian patrol entered the kill zone, then opened fire. In orbit, Velmoth watched it happen on his screens. The human squad eliminated the Crithian patrol in seconds, then vanished before reinforcements could arrive. Professional, efficient, terrifying. General, Velmoth said, we should consider withdrawal. Withdrawal? Krixtal's voice was full of rage. We have 50,000 soldiers. They have farmers. Sir, those farmers are killing our soldiers. Then we send more soldiers. Krixtal slammed his fist on the console. Prepare the second wave. All remaining ground forces. We crush them with numbers. Velmoth wanted to argue, but he was just a tactical officer. He watched as 20,000 more soldiers prepared to drop to the surface. He watched, and he worried, because he was starting to understand something terrible. The humans weren't fighting to win. They were fighting because that's what humans did. It was in their nature, written into their culture, taught to every child. They had spent their entire history at war with each other. And now they had turned all that knowledge, all that experience, all that terrible skill toward defending their home. And the Crithian Empire had just made itself their enemy. 5 weeks into the war, Velmoth had stopped counting casualties. The numbers were too depressing. What started as 50,000 Crithian soldiers had been reduced to less than 30,000. The humans had lost people too, but they never seemed to weaken. Velmoth was on the surface now. General Krixtal had ordered all officers to join ground operations after the orbital command ship was damaged by human anti-aircraft fire. How the humans had built such weapons in just a few weeks was another mystery that haunted Velmoth's dreams. His unit moved through the ruins of what had been a farming community. 20 soldiers, all experienced, all alert. They hadn't encountered enemies in 6 hours, which made Velmoth more nervous, not less. The humans were always watching, always waiting. Movement, someone hissed. 3 o'clock. Velmoth turned his weapon toward the destroyed barn. A figure moved inside. Human, female, alone, as far as he could tell. Single target, the unit commander said. Move in and capture. Command wants prisoners for intelligence. They approached carefully. The woman didn't run. She stood in the barn's doorway. Hands visible. No weapon drawn. She looked tired. Her clothes were dirty and torn, but her eyes were steady and calm. I'm Youngmi, she said in perfect Crithian. I'm a civilian. I surrender. Get on the ground, the commander ordered. She complied, moving slowly. 2 soldiers moved forward to restrain her while the others kept watch. Everything seemed routine. That should have been Velmoth's first warning. The explosion came from underground. The entire barn collapsed into a hole that hadn't been there seconds before. 5 soldiers fell into the pit. The others scattered, but more explosions erupted around them. The ground itself had been turned into a weapon. Velmoth found himself thrown against a wall, his weapon gone, his armor cracked. Through the dust and smoke, he saw Youngmi standing again. She wasn't surrendering. She was smiling. Now, she said quietly into a hidden radio. Human soldiers appeared from everywhere. Not farmers this time. Real soldiers, in proper armor, with military weapons. They moved like water, flowing around the confused Crithian unit. Cutting off escape routes. Eliminating threats. Lieutenant Taehyun led the assault. He was a special forces officer, though Velmoth didn't know that yet. He only knew that this human moved faster than should be possible, shooting with perfect accuracy, while simultaneously giving orders to his squad. The fight lasted 3 minutes. When it was over, 12 Crithian soldiers were dead. 8 were captured, including Velmoth. Not a single human had been killed. Youngmi walked over to Velmoth, who was still trying to catch his breath. She knelt down beside him. I really was a civilian, she said. 2 months ago, I designed irrigation systems. I was good at it too. Built networks that could water 50 square kilometers efficiently. Then why? Velmoth gasped. Because you attacked my home, she said simply. So I used what I knew. Irrigation networks make excellent tunnel systems. Water pumps make good explosive delivery mechanisms. Engineering is engineering, whether you're building or destroying. They took the prisoners to an underground facility. Velmoth expected torture, execution, or at least harsh treatment. Instead, they were given medical attention. Dr. Sung-ho, a colony physician, treated Velmoth's injuries with the same care he probably gave human patients. Why? Velmoth asked him. Why? Help us. Because you're wounded, Sung-ho said, as if it was obvious. The war is about stopping your army, not about cruelty. It made no sense to Velmoth. His people would never waste resources on enemy wounded. They would be left to die or killed quickly. But these humans spent precious medicine and time saving their enemies. Through the facility's thin walls, Velmoth could hear activity. The humans never stopped moving. There were always people working, planning, building, fighting. He realized they were operating in shifts. Some would fight for 12 hours, while others rested. Then they would switch. A constant rotation that meant they always had fresh soldiers. How long can you keep this up? He asked Sung-ho. As long as necessary, the doctor replied. That night, Velmoth watched through a window as Sergeant Bora's squad returned from a mission. They had been out for 36 hours straight. They looked exhausted, but they immediately began cleaning weapons and reporting to commanders. Then they would rest for 12 hours and go back out. It was a machine, a perfectly designed war machine that ran on human determination. Lieutenant Tae-hyun entered the medical facility to check on his own wounded soldiers. He saw Velmoth watching and approached. You're wondering how we do it, Tae-hyun said. Yes, our history, Tae-hyun explained. For 10,000 years, we fought each other. Tribe against tribe, nation against nation. Sometimes, the whole world at war. We learned lessons written in blood. Lessons about logistics, about morale, about the will to survive. You're proud of that? Velmoth asked. Proud of all that killing? No, Tae-hyun said quietly. We're ashamed. That's why we left Earth. Why we built colonies. We wanted to be better. We wanted peace. But we remembered the lessons, because forgetting them means dying when someone like you shows up. He walked away, leaving Velmoth with a horrible realization. The humans didn't want to be warriors. They wanted to be farmers and teachers and engineers, but they had learned, through centuries of suffering, that peace was a luxury you could only keep if you were ready for war. Young Mi visited him the next day. She brought food and water. I wanted to apologize, she said. For what? Defeating us. For the trap. It wasn't personal. You just happened to be the unit that came through that area. You're apologizing for being good at war? She smiled sadly. I'm apologizing because I had to become good at it. I liked designing irrigation systems. I was helping people grow food, making the colony better. Now I'm building death traps. After this is over, I'll go back to irrigation. But I'll always remember what I became during these weeks. Velmoth understood then. The humans weren't monsters. They were ordinary people forced to become monsters to protect themselves. And somehow, that was more terrifying than if they had been naturally violent. Because it meant any human, anywhere, could transform into a soldier when needed. Over the next week, Velmoth watched the colony's operations from his cell. He saw children delivering messages between command posts because radios might be intercepted. He saw elderly humans maintaining weapons with practiced hands. He saw teachers planning ambushes with the same careful thought they once used for lesson plans. Every human had a role. Every role served the war effort. It wasn't chaos. It wasn't random. It was organized, efficient, and absolutely relentless. When Lieutenant Taehyun's squad raided a Krithian command post 20 kilometers away and returned the same night with critical intelligence, Velmoth finally accepted the truth. His people were going to lose. Not because they weren't good soldiers. They were. But the humans were better. They had to be better. Their entire species had been practicing for this for thousands of years. The breaking point came when Velmoth saw a group of human children, none older than 10, singing together in a shelter. The song was gentle and sad. Taehyun stood nearby, listening. "What are they singing?" Velmoth asked. "An old song," Taehyun said, "about soldiers who gave everything to protect others. We teach it to children, so they understand what sacrifice means." "You teach children about death?" "We teach them about duty," Taehyun corrected. "About standing up when others need you. About being strong when it matters." Velmoth closed his eyes. His people had failed to understand what humanity was. They weren't just another species. They were survivors, shaped by endless conflict into something that couldn't be defeated by conventional warfare. Every human was a potential warrior. Every child was learning the lessons their ancestors had written in blood. And now the Krithian Empire had made itself their enemy. There was no victory here. There never had been. Only survival. If they were lucky enough to escape. The final week began with chaos. The Krithian fleet in orbit was falling apart. Human anti-ship missiles, launched from hidden ground bases, had destroyed 12 vessels. The remaining ships were desperately trying to evacuate ground forces, but human fighters controlled the sky. Velmoth was released in a prisoner exchange. Commander Daejung had proposed trading 50 Krithian prisoners for medical supplies from the Krithian fleet. General Krixtal, now desperate, had agreed. When Velmoth returned to the fleet, he barely recognized it. The command ship was scarred and burning. Officers looked exhausted and afraid. "Report to tactical immediately," a junior officer told him. "We need everyone." On the planet's surface, only 12,000 Krithian soldiers remained alive out of the original 50,000. They were scattered, disorganized, and hunted. The humans had won, but they weren't celebrating. They were systematically eliminating any remaining threat. Velmoth took his station and immediately saw how bad things were. The fleet had lost orbital superiority. Human forces controlled all major cities and most of the countryside. Krithian units were trapped in small pockets, running out of supplies, dying slowly. "We need to evacuate everyone," Velmoth said. "Now, before it's too late." High Commander Zalvok refuses to retreat, the tactical officer said bitterly. "He says it would be dishonorable." Honor. The word was ash in Velmoth's mouth. There was no honor in sending soldiers to die for no reason. The war was lost. Everyone knew it. But pride kept them fighting. One screen showed a squad of Krithian soldiers, 12 of them, trying to reach an evacuation point. They moved through a forest, weapons ready. Knowing the humans were watching, Velmoth recognized the unit leader. It was Commander Fel Knox, who had been his instructor at the military academy. "Unknown contact ahead," someone in the squad reported. They raised their weapons, prepared for ambush. But what emerged from the trees wasn't a combat unit. It was a single human soldier. Young, wounded, limping badly. He carried no weapon. His armor was torn and bloody. "Hold fire," Fel Knox ordered, suspicious. The human stopped a safe distance away and raised his hands. "I'm Private Jael. I'm not here to fight." "Then why are you here?" Fel Knox demanded. "Because you're heading the wrong way," Jael said. He pulled out a small device and projected a map into the air. "See this route? Your evacuation point was destroyed 6 hours ago. If you keep going that way, you'll walk into a kill zone." "Why tell us this?" "Because the war is over," Jael said simply. "You're trying to leave. No point in more killing. Go this way instead. He highlighted a different route on the map. There's a landing zone 12 kilometers north. No human forces between here and there. You can make it. If you go. Now. No. 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 Felnox stared at the human. This is a trick. It's not, Jael said. He reached into his pack and pulled out water containers. Take these. You'll need them. The walk is hard. He set the water down and turned to leave. Felnox called after him. You're letting us go? Jael looked back. You're defeated. You're retreating. Killing you now doesn't serve any purpose except revenge. And we're not doing this for revenge. We're doing it to protect our home. You're leaving our home? So go. He limped away into the forest. The Crithian squad stood in stunned silence. Finally, Felnox picked up the water containers. Move out. Follow his route. They did, and they reached the evacuation point safely, just as Jael had promised. Velmoth watched this exchange on his screen, his heart's heavy. Even in victory, the humans showed mercy. They could have killed that squad easily. Instead, they let them leave, because to them, the war wasn't about extermination. It was about protection, but mercy for retreating enemies didn't mean the humans were weak. Velmoth's screens showed a different story unfolding in orbit. The Crithian flagship, High Commander Zalvok's vessel, had decided to make a final stand. It was a massive ship, 10 times the size of any human vessel. It had enough firepower to destroy a city. A single human destroyer, the New Soul, moved to intercept. It was a small ship, barely large enough to carry 100 crew members. The engagement should have been one-sided. It was just not the way anyone expected. The New Soul didn't engage in traditional combat. It simply accelerated, faster and faster, directly toward the flagship. Velmoth realized what they were doing and felt horror wash over him. They're going to ram, he whispered. They're going to sacrifice themselves. The flagship's weapons fired, tearing chunks from the New Soul's hull. But the human ship kept coming. When it finally struck, the explosion lit up space like a new sun. Both ships were destroyed instantly. 100 human crew members died to eliminate the flagship and its 1,000 Crithian soldiers. Major Sung Min was commanding that ship, someone said quietly. He was one of their best tactical officers. Velmoth understood. The humans had calculated that destroying the flagship was worth the cost. 100 lives for 1,000. Plus eliminating command structure. It was cold mathematics. It was efficient. It was terrifying. The remaining Crithian fleet immediately began full evacuation. There was no more talk of honor or standing ground. They just wanted to escape. Velmoth was assigned to a rescue shuttle, one of the last leaving the planet. As they descended through the atmosphere, he saw the devastation below. Cities were destroyed. Farmland was cratered. But he also saw something else. Human construction equipment was already clearing rubble. Supply lines were being re-established. Life support systems were being repaired. They're rebuilding, he said in disbelief. The pilot nodded. That's what the intelligence reports say. They don't wait for peace to begin recovery. They do both simultaneously. The shuttle landed in a contested zone where a small Crithian force was still holding out. They loaded wounded soldiers as quickly as possible, while human artillery fire landed nearby. Not directly on them, Velmoth noticed. The humans were being precise, hitting military targets but avoiding the medical shuttle. Even now, they followed rules. Even while killing the enemy, they respected medical neutrality. It was another example of human warfare, brutal when necessary, but guided by principles that had been developed over thousands of years of conflict. The last soldier loaded, and the shuttle lifted off. Velmoth watched through the window as the planet shrank below them. Human fighters escorted them to the edge of the atmosphere, then broke off, allowing them to escape. In orbit, Only 3 Crithian ships remained. Everything else was destroyed or disabled. The evacuation was a disaster. Most of the ground forces were dead or captured. The fleet was shattered, and the humans had lost maybe 5,000 people, mostly military, but had protected their colony. How? Velmoth asked no one in particular. How did they do this? They're human, the pilot said, as if that explained everything. Maybe it did. Maybe being human meant something different than the Crithian Empire had understood. It meant being prepared for the worst. It meant turning every skill, every resource, every person into part of a defense that couldn't be broken. It meant mercy for the defeated, but relentless efficiency against the attacking. The shuttle docked with one of the surviving ships. Velmoth disembarked and found himself in chaos. Officers were arguing. Soldiers were wounded and exhausted. Everyone was trying to figure out what went wrong. But Velmoth knew what went wrong. They had attacked a species that had been preparing for war since before they could write. They had threatened the homes of people who valued peace, precisely because they knew the true cost of war. They had expected an easy victory against an opponent who had survived 10,000 years by becoming very, very good at surviving. That night, as the 3 remaining ships prepared to jump to hyperspace and flee the system, Velmoth stood in observation deck and watched Kepler 442b one last time. Lights were coming back on across the planet's surface. Cities that had been dark were illuminating again. Humans were reclaiming their world. He was the lucky one. He had survived. Most of his people hadn't. And all because someone had decided that humans would be easy prey. Velmoth made a decision then. If he survived, if he made it home, he would tell everyone what he had learned. He would warn them. Humans weren't prey. They were predators pretending to be peaceful. And if you made them show their true nature, you would regret it. The Galactic Council chamber was enormous. Representatives from 40 different species filled the circular room, each in their designated section. Velmoth stood in the center, under bright lights, feeling small and exposed. Above him, Councillor Tharvex sat in the judge's position. To the left, in the human delegation area, Ambassador Minseo waited patiently. Velmoth of the Crithian Empire, Tharvex began formally. You stand before this council to provide testimony regarding the events at Kepler 442b. The council has reviewed preliminary reports, but we need to hear directly from you. Tell us what happened. Velmoth took a breath. His wounds had healed, but the memories hadn't. 3 months had passed since the battle. 3 months of nightmares and survivor's guilt. We attacked because we thought we would win, he started. Our intelligence said the colony was lightly defended. 30,000 humans, mostly civilians. We brought 50,000 soldiers, advanced weapons, and orbital support. It should have been a simple conquest. But it wasn't, Tharvex said. No. Velmoth's voice was steady. It was a massacre. Of us. Murmurs rippled through the chamber. The Crithian Empire was known for its military strength. The idea that they had been defeated by a small human colony seemed impossible. Explain, Tharvex commanded. They were ready, Velmoth said. Not ready like a military prepares for attack. Ready like it was natural to them. When we landed, they didn't panic. They didn't evacuate. They just started fighting. Every human, the farmers, the teachers, the engineers. Children? A representative from the Pelgarian Union spoke up. Disturbed. They used children as soldiers? No, Velmoth said firmly. They protected the children. But even the children knew what to do. They delivered messages, helped organize supplies, assisted the wounded. They were part of the defense network, just in non-combat roles. Because every human is trained from youth to understand warfare. Ambassador Minseo remained silent, her face neutral. She was young for a human, maybe 30 years old, but her eyes held something ancient. Velmoth found he couldn't look at her directly. You're exaggerating, the Zenthari ambassador said. Civilians cannot fight like trained soldiers. Human civilians can, Velmoth said. That's what I'm trying to make you understand. They don't have a warrior caste like we do. They don't have battle forms or combat pheromones. They're just regular people. But every single one of them is a potential soldier. He pulled up a holographic display, showing footage from the battle. The council watched in silence as human militia executed complex ambushes, coordinated supply lines, and defended their homes with frightening efficiency. This woman, Velmoth highlighted Young Mi's image. She was an irrigation engineer. She designed water systems. When the war started, she used her knowledge to build tunnel networks and trap systems that killed hundreds of our soldiers. He switched to another image. This man, Dr. Sung-ho, was a physician. He treated wounded humans and wounded Krithians with equal care, but he also helped design field hospitals that could operate under bombardment. This is still just good training, the Zenthari ambassador insisted. It's not training, Velmoth said, his voice rising. It's their culture. It's in everything they do. I studied their information networks while we were fighting. Their children play strategy games that teach tactical thinking. Their sports build endurance and teamwork. Their entertainment celebrates warriors and sacrifice. Their history classes teach them about 10,000 years of warfare. 10,000 years? Tharvex looked at Ambassador Minseo. Is this accurate? The human ambassador stood slowly. She was small compared to most species in the room, but something about her presence commanded attention. It's accurate, Minseo said quietly, though Velmoth is being generous. Humans have been at war for longer than we've had written history. The chamber fell completely silent. We have records of conflicts going back 15,000 years, Minseo continued. Tribe fought against tribe with sticks and stones. Then nations fought nations with bronze and iron. Then empires fought empires with machines and explosives. Then the whole world went to war, twice, with weapons that could destroy cities in an instant. She pulled up her own display. Images of human history appeared. Ancient battles, medieval sieges, world wars, nuclear explosions. We've fought over land, resources, religion, ideology, and sometimes just because we didn't like each other, Minseo said. We've developed thousands of different fighting styles, hundreds of weapon types, and dozens of military theories. We've written books about warfare, studied it in schools, and passed knowledge from generation to generation. Why? Tharvex asked. Why so much violence? Why? Because we're survivors, Minseo said. Earth was a dangerous world. Predators, diseases, natural disasters. We learned to fight everything that threatened us, including each other. And we got very, very good at it. But you're peaceful now. The Zenthari ambassador protested. You've been part of the council for 20 cycles. You trade. You negotiate. You follow the rules. We're peaceful because we choose to be, Minseo said firmly. Not because we're incapable of violence. When humanity joined the galactic community, it wasn't because we needed protection. It was because we were tired of fighting. We wanted to be better. We wanted to build instead of destroy. She looked directly at Velmoth. But we remembered the lessons. Because species like the Krithian Empire exist. Species who see peace as weakness. So, we built our colonies with defenses. We trained our people. We prepared for the day someone would test us. That's militaristic, a council member said. No, Minseo replied. It's realistic. We hoped we'd never need those defenses. But hope doesn't stop attacks. Preparation does. Velmoth found his voice again. She's right. I saw it myself. The humans at New Busan didn't want to fight. They wanted to farm and teach and build families. But when we attacked, they transformed. And they didn't just fight. They won. They won because warfare isn't something they do. It's something they are. That sounds like a threat, the Zenthari ambassador said. It's not a threat. Velmoth said desperately. It's a warning. I watched our fleet get destroyed. I watched 50,000 soldiers die. I watched humans sacrifice themselves to protect their home. And when it was over, when we were retreating, they showed mercy. They gave us water and safe passage. They followed rules of war even when they were winning. He paused, making sure everyone was listening. But make no mistake, if you attack humanity, they will defend themselves with everything they have. And they have 10,000 years of experience at killing. They're good at it. Better than any species I've ever encountered. Ambassador Min Seo stepped forward. The Crithian Empire attacked a colony of 30,000 humans. We defended ourselves and we won. Now we're here, not demanding revenge or reparations. We're here asking for peace. Why? Tharvex asked. Because we don't want to be at war, Mincio said. We've seen enough death. We've caused enough destruction. When we left Earth and spread to the stars, we made a promise to ourselves. We would be better. We would choose peace whenever possible. She looked around the chamber. But we also made another promise. We would never let another species destroy us. So yes, every human colony has defense training. Yes, our children learn about tactics and strategy. Yes, we remember how to fight, because peace is only possible when you're strong enough to defend it. The council chamber was quiet for a long moment. Then Councillor Tharvex spoke. The council needs to deliberate. Velmoth, you are dismissed. Ambassador Minseo, please wait. Velmoth left the chamber. Outside, he found a viewing area overlooking the council station's central plaza. He stood there, thinking about everything that had happened. 2 hours later, the council reached its decision. The announcement was broadcast throughout the station. The Crithian Empire was found guilty of unprovoked aggression. They would pay reparations and be placed under council monitoring. More importantly, humanity was granted full protected status. Any attack on human territory would be considered an attack on the entire council. Velmoth watched the announcement with mixed feelings. Relief that the war was truly over. Shame for his people's actions. And fear because he knew the truth. Ambassador Minseo found him in the viewing area. I had to be, Velmoth said. Someone needs to understand what your species is capable of. We're capable of great kindness, Minseo said. Also great violence. We're trying to choose kindness more often these days. What if someone attacks you again? Then we'll defend ourselves, she said simply. Just like at New Busan. We don't want war, Velmoth. But we won't die quietly, just to avoid it. She left him there. Velmoth stood alone, watching ships come and go from the station. Eventually, he would return to his homeworld. He would report to his government. He would tell them everything. But more importantly, he would tell his people the truth. Humans called themselves the Human Federation. They presented themselves as explorers and traders. They talked about peace and cooperation, but Velmoth knew what they really were. They were the galaxy's apex predators, hunters who had spent 10,000 years learning every way to fight and survive. They had chosen to be peaceful, but that choice could be unmade in an instant. And the Crithian Empire had learned, at terrible cost, what happened when you threatened them. Velmoth made a promise to himself. He would spend the rest of his life warning others, not because he hated humans, but because he respected them. They deserved to be left in peace. They had earned it through suffering and sacrifice. And anyone who didn't understand that, anyone who thought humans were weak or easy targets, deserved what would happen to them. The galaxy had a new power. Not one that conquered or dominated, but one that would defend its own with absolute determination and frightening skill. Humanity had arrived, and the universe would never be the same.